Ever looked in the mirror, liked your cut, and then saw the photo and thought, why does my whole face look heavier? It's one of those weird betrayals where the hair you styled just right suddenly turns on you the second the lens comes out. It's not vanity, it's proportion. And the mirror, kind as it is, doesn't always catch what the camera will. Especially with short cuts on rounder faces, what feels fresh in motion can fall completely flat in still light. And suddenly, that lifted crown looks like it's sinking, and the soft edge you thought framed your jaw is pulling everything downward instead. This happens to so many women over 60, and no, it's not about filters or face shape blame. It's about how cuts age when they're designed for movement, not photography. And the truth is, one tiny curve, one misplaced part, one heavy corner can age a whole look without you noticing until the photos come back. So we're going to test a few fixes, gentle ones. Think crown tweaks, soft angle shifts, little shape corrections, nothing drastic. Just smart changes that hold up when the light freezes you in place. Let's start with the crown and find out why even a perfect cut can flatten the whole face in photos. Let's look at what's really happening when a cut feels right in the mirror, but reads completely wrong in photos. The crown seems level. The sides frame the face. But in the photo, the whole thing looks heavier, flatter, or just off. It's not your styling. It's how light and line behave differently when you're still. In the mirror, we're adjusting, tilting, smiling, turning our head just slightly to find the best version. But a camera? It's brutal in its honesty. It locks the shape mid-movement and exposes imbalance. A crown that sinks instead of lifts. A side edge that curves too wide. A parting that splits instead of leads. When a cut has too much weight through the sides or back and not enough lift up top, it shortens the profile and rounds the face visually. Even women with beautifully defined cheekbones lose that structure if the haircut builds width near the jaw or temples. And for those of us over 60, when our hair naturally softens and thins, we're especially vulnerable to cuts that float instead of frame. This is where so many of us were set up to fail. We were told volume is flattering, but rarely shown how to place that volume. Stylists often focus on balance when moving, not when still. And for photos, where the eye freezes on shape, that becomes the difference between flattering and frustrating. In technical terms, a cut that looks good only in motion usually lacks what I'd call anchored lift. That means lift that holds in place rather than collapsing when you stop moving. Cuts that don't have internal layering near the crown or that part too symmetrically tend to flatten out under direct light. And in a photo, that shows up as tired, wide, heavier than reality. In most of the off photos I see, the crown has too much surface smoothness and not enough subtle build underneath. It looks clean, but there's no shape supporting it. It's not a styling issue, it's a structure issue. So for our first fix, we're going to test something subtle, a slight change at the crown, lifting just enough to create visible dimension without sacrificing softness or adding bulk. Let's see what happens when we shift the weight line and give the crown a quiet little push. The first thing we're going to fix is the crown, specifically how it collapses once you stop moving. No teasing, no hard lines, no overlayering. Just one small shift that gives the shape a little spine. We're starting by adjusting the internal structure, not the topmost layer you see, but the one that sits just underneath. Using a fine point comb, we lift a horseshoe section from just behind the part and remove a bit of bulk near the midshaft, not at the root, not at the end. This creates a soft shelf of volume that holds without puffing. Then, instead of blow-drying flat or backward, which most of us were taught, we angle the brush slightly forward and upward, following the round of the head. That curve gives a natural rise, not a spike, not a poof, but a subtle arc that keeps the crown from sinking when the light hits. Already you can see how the crown no longer caves in. There's a quiet lift right where it counts, above the occipital bone, not on top of it. The eye moves up and out instead of settling in the center of the head. Just this one tweak is enough to reshape the upper third of the silhouette. It lengthens the neck visually, balances the profile, and creates space between the top of the head and the widest part of the face. No extra height needed, just better direction. Why does this work? Because before, the crown was a flat plane. Even if the rest of the hair had volume, it couldn't hold a shape without a base to sit on. Now that base is there. Light, airy, but present, the camera reads it instantly. And because we haven't added bulk near the part, the softness stays intact. No helmet, no stiffness, just enough structure to let the rest of the cut fall into place. Now that the crown holds its own, we can move on to the next zone, the jawline, and how the smallest shift in curve there changes everything. Now that the crown has a little lift, let's look at what's happening below. Specifically, that one curve near the jawline that so often gets ignored. This is where things either pull the eye downward or carry it through the whole silhouette. What we're doing here isn't dramatic. No harsh angles, no blunt reshaping. Just adjusting one part of the outer line, the area that sits right where your cheekbone starts to taper into your jaw. Instead of a straight drop or a soft undercut, we're introducing a single curved slice, barely visible, but enough to break the roundness trap. Using scissors angled upward, we lift just a half-inch section and gently scoop the line in, not taking off length, just softening the weight. It creates a slope that doesn't fight the natural roundness, but redirects it. The edge still looks full, but now it echoes the cheek, not the chin. Visually, everything shifts. The face looks longer, not because we stretched anything, but because we stopped building volume at the widest point. That little change at the jaw lets the eye float from crown to cheek to chin, without hitting a visual wall. There's an elegance in how light moves across it now. Instead of bouncing off a heavy side panel, it wraps, contouring the face, not boxing it in. Her expression looks more open. Her profile feels lifted, and the curve we added, almost invisible. But without it, everything below the cheek would still feel stuck. This is what most women over 60 aren't told. Rounder faces don't need to be sharpened. They need to be guided. One line too low, and it all turns heavy. One curve too straight, and the jawline loses its softness. But place that arc just right. You get structure and movement. Now, with the crown lifted and the jawline reframed, we've built something that finally flows, not just stands. You style it. You check every angle. It looks fresh, soft, maybe even a little youthful. Then someone tags you in a photo, and it feels like the cut aged 10 years in transit. What happened? The answer isn't about your face. It's about how your haircut reacts to light and stillness. Hair has structure, and when that structure catches light the wrong way, especially straight on, it can flatten, widen, or even cast shadows that make you look more tired than you feel. So, we're not changing the cut anymore. We're finishing it with intention. We start by lifting the root just slightly at the back of the crown using a round brush, not to add volume, but to angle the surface forward. That creates a natural slope that reflects light upward, not straight back. Then we smooth the midsection with a flat brush, just enough to catch the shape we've built without overstyling it. No product overload, just a touch of root memory spray for hold and light bounce. The difference is immediate. Instead of a flat plane, the hair has gradient. The cheekbones catch more light, The sides pull inward gently, and the jawline no longer casts a shadow across the neck. You see the softness now, not because the cut changed, but because the light has something to move across. Texture becomes a tool, not a hazard. And here's the kicker. Many women over 60 have the right haircut, but the way it's finished makes it look older in photos. Not because the style is wrong, but because it's not anchored to how cameras see shape. When everything is blown straight back or set too stiffly, the face looks flatter. When light gets caught in one place, like a puffed crown or overly rounded side, it reflects bluntness instead of flow. Now that sane hair we've shaped and balanced finally photographs the way it feels in real life. Soft, structured, intentional. All that's left, facing the camera. Because now it's not about hiding from it. It's about deciding what to trust. The mirror, the photo, or the feeling the right cut gives you either way. Here she is, same woman, same hair. But now, in both the mirror and the photo, something clicks. Not just in the shape, but in the way she holds herself. There's alignment, and that changes everything. The crown that used to sink now carries the whole silhouette. The jawline no longer feels boxed in. It guides the eye softly down instead of dragging it wide. And that finish, light reflects just where it should. The camera sees her as she is, not harsher, not heavier, just present, side by side. It's subtle, but unmistakable. The old photo had tension. The new one doesn't. Her profile feels longer, not tighter. Her cheeks brighter, not because of makeup, but because the framing finally supports her features, not competes with them. And she noticed it. Not with a gasp, not with a dramatic reaction, just a quiet, almost amused smile. The kind you give yourself when something finally makes sense. She said, "I didn't think I needed a new haircut. I just needed it to stop arguing with me." That's the real transformation. Not the cut, not the styling, the feeling of seeing yourself reflected clearly, whether you're catching your own eye in the mirror or seeing that photo pop up on someone else's screen. Because here's the thing, the mirror moves with you. The camera doesn't. That's why it's so easy to feel betrayed by one and affirmed by the other, depending on the day. But when the cut's right, both tell the same story. And more importantly, so do you. All we did was lift the crown, curve the edge, and adjust the finish. Nothing drastic. Just the kind of shift that makes both versions of you, mirror and photo, finally match the one in your head. Makes you wonder, if your haircut suddenly looked like it felt, what would that change? A little lift, one curved edge, and a smarter finish, and suddenly, the face you see in the photo finally feels like the one you meant to show. Not younger, not altered, just right. It didn't take a new identity, no dramatic chop, just a shift in where the shape sat, how it caught light, how it moved, how it stopped fighting your face and started listening to it. If you've ever felt that quiet disconnect, the one between what you see and how you look when the picture snaps, you're not alone. It's not vanity, it's design. And the good news? That's fixable. You don't need to change everything, just the right detail in the right place. For the light to meet you halfway. So tell me, what part of your hair still doesn't feel like you? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear. Because there's always one spot we keep adjusting, reparting, or pushing behind the ear. And sometimes that's the clue. And if this got you thinking, stick around. We're about to dive into the fringe next. Soft, sharp, or swept. And which ones are quietly aging you without permission. See you there.